Hello, this is Malorian, this is the Orc Tactical Team, and what we're going to be touching on now was another viewer question, and what they were wanting to know is, Malorian, you always talk about winning the deployment phase and getting the right matchups. What exactly does that mean? I'm fairly new to the game. What actually are the right matchups, and what do you do to make sure you actually get these? So, I guess the first part to really touch on here is just really the basics. Every unit is going to have a good and a bad type of unit for them to face. So for the perfect example, if you're looking at something like Black Orcs, the best thing about them is the fact that they can get up to strength 7. So what they would love to go up against is something that is high armor or rather high toughness as well, something where you're really going to be scoring on that, where it's very important for them to be getting that. Something then where they'd be pretty much useless is something that would be a low toughness, low armor. Because sure, they can go with dual choppas, and Black Orcs are always great for that, but it really isn't the right pairing for them. And so of course something like, say, if they were to be paired up against a horde of Dark Elf witches, that would be bad news, because it really doesn't care or matter the fact that they're so strong or anything like that. They're going to be hit last, or they're going to be hitting last, being struck themselves first, and they're just going to be kind of cut down, right? They don't really have that much armor, and all these strength 3s, re-rolled the hits, blah, 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 are just going to be chopping them all up. So you really have to be looking at these things, understanding them, and going from there. And I can touch on every single one in the book for what would be a good and what would be a bad, but really you just have to kind of really see what would be the strengths of what you're trying to be going after with. Why are you taking this in your army in the first place? Touching on another one that's going to be the most popular in an orc army would be the Savage Orc Biggins. We love them because they have lots of attacks, strength 5, a pretty good weapon skill, and they also have a 5+ ward when you got the shrunken head. So something they would love to be up against is something that is high strength, because on them it's actually fairly wasted. Let's say you're going to be up against White Lions. The White Lions could be going against your Black Orcs, hitting wounding on a 2+. In either way, they're going to die, because there's no armor against that. Same thing with the Savages. All of a sudden they have a 5+ ward, so they're being able to withstand that a whole lot better. Something else that can go is not even just in the combat, but in the kind of how things are being faced off. So let's say again I'm up against Dark Elves, and on one side there's a big unit of their crossbowmen. If one of my units is going to be a Squig Herd, something that's toughness 3 with no armor, well, I don't want them over there at all, because they're going to shoot at me, they're going to kill all my guys really quickly, and actually more probable is the fact that they're going to kill all my handlers, and I'll just explode, and there's 400 points just gone like that. So again, I could touch on all these, but for the most part you just got to really look at why you're taking this unit, so you know what's the best thing for it to be going up against, and then just being able to have that mind to say, okay, well, what's the weakness of this? If I was on the other side of the board facing this unit, what would I be using against it? And so once you have that all worked out, the first thing you want to do when you get into a game, of course, is go and see what units they have. Go through their army, see what different units and combinations of characters they have, and then decide what is the best matchups for you. And it really comes down to criticality too, right? You could have a whole list of, well, okay, this is pretty good here and this is pretty good there, but there usually is a couple of those matchups like, well, man, I really want to get this unit into that, and I really don't want their unit to get into mine. And those are the really important ones you have to really focus on. If you get those other ones where it's kind of favorable on your side to get that matchup, you can still end up losing the game, because if they get the ones where it's really critical, they're just going to sweep through you, and then whereas your unit might have been a good pairing against this one, well, once they won here, all of a sudden it's 2 units against that same one of yours, and it's a completely different situation. So you really have to have that down, and when you're getting ready to set up your units, knowing that, okay, man, these are my priorities, this is what I have to make sure. Something that could be for your Orcs and Goblins is if you're playing something and man, they have one unit that can take a magical banner, I bet you they're going to have the flaming banner, and for me, I have a big unit of trolls. So no matter what, I don't want this to be going up against them. Or I'm up against Warriors of Chaos. They have a big unit of their knights. I really want to have my trolls going up against them, because not only do I have my wards, my regen to counteract their good ability to hit and all that, but I can just puke on them and ignore their 1+ awesome ward save or armor save. So really make sure you have those in your head. Then, of course, we get to the deployment phase. Now, the first thing you're going to be doing after that is rolling to see who has first turn. And this is where you have to kind of be using this here as well, because you might be wanting to have first turn because you're a shooting army and you want to shoot things up, or maybe it's a situation where you're after objectives. And if you got first turn, you could get the jump on the objectives and be better that way. But a big thing you also going to be looking for is not only what is it going to give for the roll for first turn, but also this whole battle of the back and forth for deployment. And so a lot of times what you might see is that, well, you know what? First turn doesn't really matter. I mean, whether we fight here on the board or here, we're going to meet up eventually and we're going to fight. There might be no flags or anything like this we need to be capturing, so it's not really a big important thing for me to go first. There's not a lot of shooting here. It's okay. So if they put down the first drop, you now have the ability to go and counter that. And that's what you really want them to do, is that they'll put down a unit, you put something counter. They'll put another unit, you put something to counter. Now, a big part that's going to be going on here is the things that are throwaway units. Things that just don't matter and they can go anywhere. One of the biggest ones you're going to have something for like your orcs and goblins would be like wolf riders. They're the perfect example for this, because I can put a wolf rider unit over here, a wolf rider unit over here, and not only do they not really have a big effect on the battle, so it's not like they're going to put like the perfect counters there, but the thing is as well is that I actually get to redeploy those very quickly. Even though they're way on the flanks, they get to Vanguard, their movement 9. So by the first turn, they could be all the way to the center or wherever, right? So the fact that I'm starting with them there is almost just like a free placement for me, because it really doesn't give anything. As well, sometimes in your strategy, especially if you're going up against Wood Elves or something, they do this a lot, or if it's Dwarves or something, although they don't have a lot of throwaway units, is that when you're against armies that are going to be castle on one board edge, they'll do that with something like that that's really fast by saying, well, I might be over here, I might be over here, and you're left then placing your larger blocks against them, trying to guess which way they're going to go. So of course, if you have that ability to do that to them, that's fantastic. Of course, as an orc and goblin, that usually doesn't happen. You're not usually trying to really overwhelm one side, but hey, that might be the strategy in your case. So the big thing there, obviously, then is you need throwaway units. If you go into a game that has, you know, I went to that one tournament, it was just a bag of hammers. I said, screw support stuff, I'm just going to take all combat units. And of course the problem is that I am just going to have to deal with whatever matchups I get, and I'm just going to have to believe that I'm just going to have to power through whatever I get. Or maybe I'm going to use Hand of Gork to correct it. But for most armies, they just can't do that. So, I mean, if you can have, maybe you do your Wolf Rider first, and then the other Wolf Riders. Your single Troll is probably going to go in the back. Then you could be putting your Bunker and Night Goblins. With that there, I've done now 4 drops, and I've really given away very little. I mean, sure, I've given away that probably my BSB in general is going to be in the center there, but I mean, that's usually the case anyway, and you know what? That's not even necessarily so. Even with that deployment, I could be all on one side with everything else, easily within a foot for my Troll to switch back over, and then slamming through. And again, what you're trying to do is trying to just kind of like have this standoff and lasting long enough with these kind of false drops, so it gets to the point where they run out of things, of eagles or whatever it is, and they have to start putting down their important units. Alright, I guess I have to go and put down my knights now, and that means great. That means my trolls go here, and this is how we're going to be matching up. And it's really that simple. So just trying to know your matchups going into it, knowing the most critical ones you want to make sure are going to happen, and then just trying to stall with your little throwaway deployments so you can get and start seeing those ones that are going to be the biggest ones are going to be winning you the game. Now, what that also means is that sometimes to get the best matchup, you're going to have to give up something somewhere else. So it could be that, well, okay, I got this critical matchup here, but in order to make this all happen, maybe I had to deploy this, and so he got a good pairing here. And really all that means is that you'll have to be more defensive with that, or you're going to have to be supporting it. I mean, if that's what it takes, that I'm going to decimate here and get lots of points and have enough to win the game, and over here I'll just move up and then start fleeing charges to stall him for all the game, whatever it takes, right? In the end, the win's the win. So you have to kind of really be playing towards that. The only other thing that I can be saying about this is something that I kind of touched on a long ways ago, is that this is a big change here in 8th, where in 7th, it really mattered how much you wield for whenever you charged. Now, something you can do that's a little bit sneaky in 8th is you can be doing kind of a false deployment. And what that is that as you're trying to deploy things, it actually looks like it's very bad pairings for you. So if you were to look across the board, A to A, B to B, C to C, D to E, blah, 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 it looks like bad pairings, just the way that you've been placing these down. But really what you might be looking for to do is that, because when you go up to that point and you're going to be getting those first charges, maybe your A is after his B, your B is after his C, and your C is after his D, right? Because really just got to measure that distance, and it doesn't matter how much his wheels. So when it gets to your charging phase, your whole thing can basically shift over, and you're getting all your pairings that way. That's obviously something that can work in your favor if you can pull it off. It's also rather dangerous as well, because if something fails, all of a sudden it can, you know, now you're kind of showing a flank to something else, and it can go downhill very quickly. But you know, if you're in that situation where you're behind the ball and things are looking like you're losing the deployment battle, you can start thinking diagonal like that, and it could be the way to get you out of that bind. So there you go. That's really what it is for trying to win the deployment phase and trying to get the right matchups. And you know, if you have any other questions, let me know. Thank you. Bye.